Chauvin was found guilty, but was that the just verdict? After approximately 11 hours of deliberation, the jury came back with a verdict. I think it being that quickly, everybody knew exactly what the verdict was going to be. The question was, would he be found guilty of second degree, third degree, or manslaughter? And they found him guilty on all three counts. Now, of course, there are pundits out there on the conservative side that are saying justice has not been served, that there's overwhelming evidence that it was not the knee to the neck that caused the death. This man was a known commodity to the Minneapolis police. He was a drug addict, a drug user. He was not the model citizen that some members of the media would have us believe. And I think we all understood that George Floyd was, again, not exactly the way that it was portrayed all last summer and the endless tributes, funerals, and all of the rioting that then ensued. But let's get real here. 9 minutes, 20 seconds of video with Eric Chauvin's knee in George Floyd's neck. That was it. Now, do I think that there was pressure on this jury that they better return a guilty verdict, that they didn't want to see their city burned to the ground? I think there was definitely some of that went with them. Yet at the same time, 9 minutes, 20 seconds of video. You can stand with the police and still be for justice. You can believe in the institution of the police, believe that they are absolutely, for the most part, honorable. They are the ones we call when we are in trouble. We expect them to represent law and order, to defend us, to protect us. But there are, obviously, in every institution, including the church, individuals who don't belong there. And even within the police, if you remember all last summer, we were saying right here, we can be against injustice and for the police. We can do both. And I believe that that is exactly what this verdict represents today in this sense. I will give the prosecution credit. They did a good job in not making this about race. Maxine Waters, Jesse Jackson, Joe Biden, and the rest of the lying legacy media want this all to be about race and systemic racism, etc., etc., etc. Basically accusing all police of being on the hunt for black people. The prosecution made sure that they did not invoke the race card. In fact, they said they were very much pro-police, but that they did want to root out rogue cops, bad eggs, individuals who don't believe there, and they said that what Eric Chauvin did is not a representation of police. It is a representation of a bad, corrupt cop. I agree. Now, I've not said a lot about the George Floyd case as the months it has ensued because I follow what I preach. And what I was yelling about all last summer was telling all of the rioters, the looters, and everybody going nuts in the streets, calm down. Let the wheels of justice turn. Let the wheels of justice happen. So I have not said a lot, and that's been on purpose. Now that the verdict has been rendered, now let me say, George Floyd, No, he was not a model citizen. He was not a humble choir member of a church, just living a peaceable life, who was just for no apparent reason harassed by the police. We all know that this guy has a history of even some domestic violence, drug use, drug abuse, petty crime. I don't think there's any question about that. What made him the poster child now of all things justice and freedom and reform and justice for George, it's a pretty moving, powerful, simple object for people to get their heads around. You see a fellow human being struggling to live, crying for help. He was face down, handcuffed. He couldn't have gotten up if he wanted to. The police had him restrained. They could have just stood there. If he had tried to get up, they could have made sure that he didn't get up. But for Eric Chauvin, for 9 minutes and 20 seconds to keep his knee to the base of his neck until there was literally no pulse, everybody, I don't care, Democrat, Republican, liberal, conservative, everybody looks at that, and not through the eyes of black and white, not through the eyes of race. You look at it through the eyes of right and wrong, and that's a fellow human being. And that was just plain wrong. I am sorry on the one hand for the family of George Floyd and what they have been put through, having to literally relive this every single day. I am sorry for people who needlessly lost their businesses all in the name of, quote, justice. I'm even sorry to a certain extent for Eric Chauvin. Sorry in the sense that the blue wall didn't come and bail him out. The police did not, quote unquote, turn a blind eye because he was one of theirs. You understand, this man doesn't have a friend in the world tonight. This man is going to a horrible place, and what's going to be left of his life in the natural sense, and he's only, 45, 46? The pastoral side of me says, lest he comes to Christ, the time that he has here on earth is going to be a very miserable existence. And I feel sorry, but I also understand his own actions, his own pride put him there. Because what he did was not about following proper police technique. That's why he was even willing to take a plea to third-degree murder. Remember that last summer? He knew. He knew. We can argue, and I know that the Maxine Waters of this world, do you understand that tonight they're not happy either? They wanted some rioting in the streets. They wanted more upheaval. This absolutely destroys the narrative now of systemic racism in police and in the judicial system. I heard the Attorney General of Minnesota, and he tried to lump everything that's ever happened to any black man incarcerated as, they were a victim that did not receive justice. Bullhawk. But George Floyd, again, what happened to him at the hands of Eric Chauvin should not have happened. And you can talk to me about his having drugs in his system. Can you honestly say, if he had simply been arrested, put in handcuffs, laid on the ground, that alone would have killed him because of the drugs in his system? Or was it the knee to the neck? This is simple. The jury saw it for 9 minutes and 20 seconds, and I am sure that there had to be at least one, quote-unquote, conservative in that group. And it was a unanimous decision. Going forward, I think we have learned a valuable lesson as a nation, those that are thinking reasonably tonight. We can be for the police and against injustice. And if you're honest, you've had at least one run-in your lifetime with an unreasonable police officer. I had it happen many years ago. My boys were young. I was driving, pulled over, and the police officer, very argumentative, very combative, and then outright lied about what I was doing. And my boys knew it. I had two little boys who had been raised, do what the police tell you, don't argue with police, you be respectful, you get pulled over, make sure they can see your hands, no sudden moves, do not get smart, surly, sassy, yes sir, no sir. I had raised my boys, trust the police. I still trust the police. I honor police. We've had church services. We honor police. But that day, that officer literally lied. My oldest boy was crushed. He was probably about 6 years old at the time, maybe 7. And he cried, said, "Daddy, why did the policeman lie?" And I had to try to explain to him so that a 7-year-old boy could understand that the police, they're the good guys. But sometimes there can even be a bad guy among the good guys. And that's our takeaway here. And that's what we need going forward. Now you know what the Democrats are going to do, what the lying legacy is going to do. They'll take a little mini victory lap right now, but they will still decry the rampant racism, etc., etc., etc. And the reason they got to do that is for two reasons. One, it keeps the minority vote where they want it to be in their pocket, and it keeps their grift going. Oh yeah, Jesse Jackson was there for the reading of the verdict. Really, I wasn't aware that Jesse was from Minnesota. Yeah, we know why he was there. Grifters grift. And at the end of the day, the Maxine Waters, the Jesse Jacksons, they really don't want the racism issues solved in our country because, again, that's the end of their gig. It's the end of their shtick. They're one-trick ponies. And the more unrest they keep among us, well, the better it is for them and their power. Because they can lie and manipulate. And they're the real racists, the real new plantation owners, keeping an entire race of people convinced they can't make it without government welfare, government housing, free. But tonight, I do believe that a cloud is lifted, and I do believe in this case, in this situation, we can argue about the jury should have been sequestered. They were exposed to too much media. And what Maxine Waters said, trust me, this conviction is not going to be overturned on appeal. In this situation, in this case, justice has been served. And moving forward now, again, first of all, as a pastor, let there be peace. And then as the Bible says, let us reason together. Can we get away from talking at each other about this issue and talk to one another? Because the more we tend to turn a deaf ear or try to excuse or try to somehow justify or explain away, believe it or not, that also empowers groups like Antifa and BLM. We understand that Black Lives Matter as a group. We understand that it's Marxist, that it's all about creating turmoil. That in the end, if the Marxists ever really do take full control of everything here, the very people that got them there are going to be the first ones that get exterminated and gone. And so the average person of color with their BLM t-shirt or sign doesn't necessarily equate them as part of the movement. They just want equality and justice. And in this situation, and with what has been happening, you could not watch that video as a human being and not be moved, angered, and upset. Because here's the truth. There really was no divide over this. Conservatives watched that video and were angered. The division was created by the false narrative of the lying legacy corporate, corrupt, mainstream media and lying politicians like Joe Biden, Kamala thinks she's a Hottie Harris, Mad Maxine Waters and her James Brown hairdo, and all the rest of the race pimps that are willing to prostitute black people for votes and for power. Tonight, may America rest easy. Rumble is where you will find my content when they eventually say, I can't post here anymore because of community violations or whatever trumped up charges they come up with. That's rumble.com/Pastor Marty. One word.